Good afternoon. My name is Shelly Miranda, and I'm going to be discussing my project for the Practicum class today. I chose to do mine over the subject of research. It was it's a new department within my facility, and which I didn't know anything about. So I figured that this would be a great opportunity for me to learn a little bit more about it. So first I want to just do a little background on research itself. Research, it can be defined as the diligent, systematic inquiry or investigation to validate and refine existing knowledge and generate new knowledge. Research requires planning, organization, rigor, and persistence. It's needed to generate knowledge about human responses and the best interventions to promote health, prevent illness, and manage illness. Coming into the BSN program here at WT and coming into especially this master's program at WT, my knowledge on research was limited. I don't really feel like it was really touched on too much. I went through an LVN program first and then through an RN program, and I don't really remember going over too much or spending time on research. So it was very foreign to me. I never really hear too much about research jobs for nurses. And I guess I've never worked in a facility that focused on research. Obviously, working in a hospital, they do. It's just, it really wasn't discussed too much to me. And so this was all foreign to me, starting these classes and especially in an actual clinical setting with research. So this is one of the main reasons why I chose this topic, just because I figured it would be a great learning opportunity. Let's see, I just went over kind of what research is. The research department in my facility, I work in an outpatient GI procedure center, which is also connected with a GI clinic. And so physicians can see patients in the clinic setting, and then they can come over and do procedures on the endoscopy side. So the research department was newly developed in the spring. It was placed on the clinic side. The PI, and which is a principal investigator, and the research nurse are the ones who head up this program. But we've got some new physicians who've just come out of residency within the past few years, and so they're the ones who kind of pushed for this because they thought it'd be a great opportunity, not only for learning, but it'd be a great opportunity for patients as well. So this was newly established. It's just kind of getting off the ground. There's only one study in place right now. It's difficult right now, for one, because it's so new, but also because of COVID. It's kind of thrown a kink in even starting new studies. And so it just, the way it came in, it kind of came in at a crazy time. So the overseeing the facility or overseeing the department is a PI, which is a principal investigator. She is kind of the physician in charge. She heads the department. She carries out the clinical trial protocols. She conducts certain aspects of the clinical trials and research. So she's the go-to. She's the main go-to. She works close with the research nurse. The research nurse, I have a whole new respect for her because her role entails so much. And honestly, not knowing too much about research to begin with, I felt kind of in the dark until I took my research classes. But seeing everything that the research nurse has to do gives me a whole new perspective. the field of research. This research nurse, it's only her. She basically, does everything for the department. She's the one, along with the PI, when companies have a new a new potential study for our facility, they contact her and the PI. They give her all of the information that is needed to get everything started, what the study is for, what disease process is it for, what medication are they doing, what treatment are they doing, who is going to qualify, is there pre-screening processes, are there any charges to the patient, are there any incentives for the patient. So they go over all of this with the research nurse and the PI. The research nurse is the one who is reaching out to patients, calling them, messaging them, visiting them with them in the office, trying to figure out who can qualify for these different studies that are in the pipeline, trying to figure out how to get them, to be able to participate. That's the hardest work. That was one thing that whenever I was following her, shadowing her, that was one of the most difficult parts, was just getting in contact with people, finding people who would be willing to participate, explaining everything to them in a way that they would understand, and kind of letting them know how it would be of benefit to them. But I definitely, that took up a lot of the research nurse's time, because she spent a lot of time doing that. She's very organized. She's got to keep all of the information in a program that is specific for these research studies. She keeps all of the data straight. There's so much information that she is in charge of keeping together for the study that is in place right now in the facility. It entails an EGD and colonoscopy, those tissue biopsies. She's got to prepare, store until she's able to send them out. So some of them it's very particular on how she has to do that, and she does a great job keeping all of that straight. She's got a lot on her plate, and she is very knowledgeable. She knows what each study, like I said, the only one that is actually in place, but the ones that are in the pipeline, she knows what each one of them entails. She knows all the ins and outs of them. So she's ready on a dime to talk about whichever one could be coming up. The PI also has a backup PI just in case she was out, or she were to need somebody to fill in for her. For example, she's about to give birth, and so luckily she's got 2 PIs in the practice that will kind of take over for her when she's out. Since the research department, this brings me to my whole project. Since the research department and the endoscopy center where I actually work are 2 separate entities, I wanted to kind of give the endoscopy nurses a little more insight into what the research department entails, because there is minimal interaction really with the between the 2 sides. Aside from when the PI and the research nurse have to do this EGD and colonoscopy for the study that is actually in place right now, there's minimal interaction between the 2. And so I kind of wanted to give them a little bit more insight into what goes on behind the scenes, just because it's a lot. And I think it's interesting. There are some potential studies. The one that is in place right now, it requires a whole pre-screening process. Once the patient makes it through that, then they can proceed with the EGD colonoscopy, and then they can proceed on with the medication administration aspect. And then if all goes well with that, then they can continue on even after the study is done. If they have a good response to the medication, they can continue on receiving that at free of cost, which is actually pretty neat for these patients, especially for those who can't afford their medication or who don't have any insurance. So my main idea or my main focus for this project was I wanted to kind of immerse myself into the research department with a nurse, follow her, watch as she does a patient intake for a pre-screening process, does the lab work, organizes the tissue biopsies that they do for an EGD colonoscopy, making sure that everything's aligned, sends them out, contacts the patients about potentially participating, has a meeting with the PI, or has a meeting with a clinical research director from a potential study that could be coming up. This I feel was the best way for me to actually learn. My role was kind of limited just because there are certain aspects of these studies or the research part that only those who are legally, how do you say it, consented to be able to discuss information about these studies or talk about them, or even give out certain information. But I was able to learn so much just about what the research nurse's duties are. So I wanted to be able to provide that information in a brief in-service to my colleagues, and kind of give them a brief idea of what all is involved. That includes like who can participate in the studies, what are the requirements for each study, what steps are taken throughout the study, are there any initiatives for patients, how can this be a benefit to the patient? And each study has a different criteria. So my biggest thing that or the best way that I feel I could provide this information was by providing the endoscopy center with a brief printed overview of the current studies, which is just one, as well as those which could be up and coming. And then we could keep this printed overview or draft at the nurse's station, just to, they can kind of review and just kind of get a little bit of background of what's in the pipeline, or what these studies are for. This way also would be of benefit to the patients that we see on the endoscopy side that could potentially be part of these studies. This would kind of give nurses an idea of what's coming up. If some of these potential patients have questions, well, we could just kind of give, some general information or direct them to the research nurse. We just wouldn't be totally clueless. That's my thing. I think is I hate for somebody to ask me a question and then be like, well, I don't really know. So this would just kind of be able to give us a more general idea of what's going on, and we can answer those questions for those patients, or find out the answer. So we're just not totally in the dark about what's going on, especially when we're caring for those patients who are participating. Also, in knowing kind of what's going on or what's coming up in the pipeline, this could kind of give us, which is what I did as part of my practicum as well. If I saw somebody who I thought could be a potential candidate to be able to participate in something that was coming up, or something that is, the study that is already going on, I could give that information to the research nurse and kind of give her a little background of, okay, hey, this and this is what's going on with this patient. I think that maybe they would be a potential to be able to participate in this study. this kind of helps the research nurse out a little bit because this kind of cuts down on all the background stuff that she's got to do. So this kind of just, maybe she could just review it and then maybe contact the patient. This just kind of gives a little bit, just gives her a little bit of help as well. Also, as part of this project, aside from creating the document, going over the current studies as well as the potential studies in the future, having a meeting once a month between the endoscopy nurses and myself, the research nurse, the PI, our nurse manager. This just kind of gives us a chance to review everything as far as what studies are going on, what's been started, what could be coming up, what hiccups are the research nurse and the patients having. How can our nurses help out? What can we do to assist her? What can we take off of her plate because it's just her? What's been changed? Just so kind of that way we can kind of touch base and see how we can, improve something or better assist our patients. Having a general idea can also help. We can be a backup to this research nurse. It's only her. So having a general idea of, maybe having to fill in for her sometime may be helpful for her. So that's about it. The main idea for my project was just to get a little bit more knowledge about what the research department in our facility entails and be able to share that knowledge with the endoscopy nurses who are also, this is also brand new to us or to everybody. So I just thought, having a brief in service, letting them know what all is entailed in the research department, and then having a monthly meeting, going over any changes and just making sure everybody's on the same page, being able to help each other out, and hopefully really get this research going. Hopefully, this will really help our patients. Some of them, who have been struggling, hopefully this is another means of treatment for them. And by all of us being on the same page, that will help kind of push everything forward even more. Thank you for your time.